myself 2023 was the year I was going to be fluent in Spanish, baby. I've been disciplined like I've never been before, but I still find myself making these same mistakes over and over again. And now that I recognize them, I'm gonna say maybe there's people out there who make these same mistakes and we can talk about it together, okay? Numero uno. Number one on the list is definitely ignoring the accents on top of Spanish words. Those words, those accents are there for a reason. You are supposed to put more emphasis on that letter. So you don't just say, for example, you don't just say está instead of esta. Este, esto, esto. Like there's reasons for those accents. Hola, buenos, me llamo daljiimarax. Bienvenidos if you are new here. We are learning Spanish together. Yeah, together. You read that right. Me ignoring those is kind of like not just changing the meaning behind that word sometimes. Like it cannot make sense. And it's just also like my tone is changing the trajectory and like the vibe of the conversations that I'm having when I'm not using those. It can sound a little bit like, what's going on? Like you're not saying these. It's not just you not pronouncing it right, but you not even like, I don't know how to put it. Like it's like, it's almost like if somebody was to say, oh my God, I'm so happy, I am so excited, this is the best day of my life, in a very monotone. It's like, but are you happy? That's what it's like when you like don't put emphasis on letters that have that accent mark over them. You have to use that, like you have to pay attention to that. And I'm also sometimes forget to put the accent like when I'm writing down Spanish. Like that's important as well, because I want to be able to like read and write Spanish as well as I'm going to be able to speak it. It's not just enough for me to be able to speak it well. If I'm texting somebody, if I have to write something down, if I have to sign papers, my Spanish needs to be on point all the way around, okay? I have a very terrible habit of making the ah sound at the end of any word that has like an e or a u. So if the word is este, I will always just by default say esta. If it's asiento, I would say asienta. If it's, let me see. I don't know why I do that. It's just like, it's much more like a simpler sound to make. And maybe it's just because I'm an English speaker, making sure I don't make my A's in Spanish sound like my A's in English. I don't know. It's just like that learning how to speak a language like English and Spanish are so similar. Like the letters basically sound the same in a way. There's just like a bit more emphasis on your tone. They basically sound like ah in a and ah in Spanish in English are the same, you know? In Spanish is ah, in English is ah or a. So it's like when the words are so similar, it's so easy to like pronounce it like English. So me, I'm always pronouncing, if it has the u or e at the end of it, I always just say like for some reason. I don't know why I do that all the time, but that doesn't even, like when I do that, like that kind of like the word doesn't make sense or the sentence doesn't make sense. It's not necessarily about how I pronounce things, but comprehension. Sometimes because I'm trying to learn this language as fast as possible because I've just been so procrastinating so much, as I switch my lessons too early. Now you definitely don't want to stick on like the same lesson too long, because then it gets redundant and then you get bored and then you miss days, weeks, and months. But also switching them too early, it's like you're not actually like retaining that information that you're learning. So it's very important to like make sure you're at least giving yourself 2 to 3 days on one specific lesson before you move on to the next one. So I stopped trying to like have goals like this week I'm learning this week I'm learning that. This like I'm gonna learn this until I feel comfortable enough to move on to the next one. Not until I perfect everything in this lesson, but just comfortable. Okay, I remember enough, I'm retaining enough, and I can probably apply this to the next lesson that I'm moving on to. So I slowed down on my lessons. Like I had my goals in January were so ambitious, and I pretty much didn't make them because I was trying to move too fast. And then I ended up forgetting, and I ended up getting discouraged, and I would go days, sometimes weeks without practicing Spanish. So I was like, I'm not gonna learn the language this way. Like, it's okay if I don't know every single Spanish word. Like, it'll be okay. It will be okay, Dachi. So I slow down. If I feel like I'm a little too caught up on something, maybe I'll take a break from it and move on to something else. But I'm not just skipping through lessons. Okay, this week we're learning about family vocabulary. This week we learning prepositions. This week we learning the past tense. Like I'm slowing down. Let's get a language exchange partner, which I'm going to talk about that more as time goes on. But do not wait until you get a certain amount of words or learn specific things to talk to somebody. Me being so nervous to mess up and not be perfect at Spanish stops me from speaking to Spanish speakers, and that's so stupid because a lot of the times that I've spoken to Spanish speakers, like in Spanish, and I say something wrong, or like whether I pronounce it wrong or use the wrong like maybe I'll say the sentence in the wrong order because I'm thinking of English, they'll correct me, and I will never be with that one correction with that person, that conversation, I never make that mistake ever again. So it's like you won't know what mistakes you're making or how you sound to somebody who knows the language unless you speak to them. I understand it can be so like embarrassing and like cringy to speak to somebody when you only know so much, but it's like you can't learn it talking to yourself. You can't learn it watching a TV show. Like you got to speak to somebody who knows this language to improve. And me making that one little mistake and them correcting me, I never make that mistake again. Like that's the payoff is better than is much more fulfilling and like easier to get through than the fucking embarrassment of me saying something wrong. Like, you know, the one mistake I make that messes me up so bad is writing in Spanish. My English brain always puts like the subject before the adjective, and in Spanish it's the other way around. Por ejemplo, like if I'm writing like a sentence in Spanish, I would say like ese en rojo coche, but in Spanish it's actually ese en coche rojo. So like you putting that that adjective after the subject, and that trips me up so bad because it's like this don't make no damn sense, but it does make sense because it's Spanish and not English. In English it's the other way around. So I'm like, yuck, like this is tripping me up so bad, and that's something that honestly, this mistake is probably what has kept me from being disciplined in Spanish so much, because that is something that is always on my mind when I'm thinking about speaking to somebody else. It's like, am I even going to say the sentence in the right order? Because I know in Spanish, a lot of the, you know, when you say a sentence, because of the nouns and the adjectives and the subjects, you switch those around a lot. So I will always get nervous. Like if I say something to somebody, they're going to be like, girl, what the hell is you talking? Why are you talking backwards? And I would always be so nervous. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to speak. I'm going to wait until I know X, Y, and Z. And that don't work. It don't work that way. You got to talk to people. But I'm working through these mistakes, and I want to know what y'all working through as well. Let me know.